If you saw this in a movie, you wouldn't believe it. You'd say the scriptwriters went too far. Imagine the scene. It is May 5th, 1945. The war in Europe is in its final, gasping breath. Deep in the Austrian Alps, a medieval castle is under siege. Inside the walls, a group of American Gs are crouching at the windows, rifles aimed at the tree line. Right next to them, shoulder to shoulder, are soldiers of the German Wehrmacht. They are sharing ammunition. They are covering each other's reload. They are fighting as one unit. Their enemy? A battalion of the fanatical Waffen-SS, determined to kill everyone inside. This isn't fiction. This is the battle for Castle Itter. It is the only documented battle in World War II where the U.S. Army and the German Wehrmacht fought side by side. How did this happen? How did sworn enemies become brothers in arms for one desperate day? To understand this madness, we have to go back to the beginning. We have to open the gates of the VIP prison. Schloss Itter is a breathtaking structure. Built in the 13th century, it sits on a hilltop in North Tyrol, dominating the valley below. In 1943, the Nazis requisitioned this castle for a very special purpose. It became a prison facility for honor prisoners, high-profile French politicians and generals, whom the Nazis hoped to use as bargaining chips. The guest list was staggering. There was Paul Reynaud and Édouard Daladier, two former prime ministers of France. There were Generals Maxime Weygand and Maurice Gamelin, the former heads of the French army, and there was Jean Baratra, a world-famous tennis champion. For years, they lived in a strange limbo. They had private rooms and a library, but they were prisoners, guarded by the SS Death's Head units. But by May 1945, the guards were panicking. The Third Reich was collapsing. On May 4th, the commandant of the prison, Sebastian Wimmer, realized the end was near. Fearing capture by the Americans or execution by the SS for incompetence, he fled. The guards followed him. Suddenly, the prisoners were the masters of the castle. They broke into the armory, grabbing rifles and pistols. But as they looked out from the castle walls, their relief turned to terror. The woods surrounding the castle were not empty. They were crawling with the Waffen-SS Jean-Ties von Berlichingen Division hardliners, who had orders to leave no witnesses. The VIPs were trapped. They needed a miracle. That miracle came from the most unlikely source. In the nearby town of Wrgl, Major Josef Gangl of the Wehrmacht was trying to keep his men alive. Gangl was a hero of the Russian front, a decorated soldier. But he was done with the Nazis. He had secretly made contact with the Austrian resistance. When a messenger from the castle reached him, begging for help, Gangl faced a choice. He could run, or he could risk everything to save a group of French politicians. Gangl chose honor, but he had a problem. He only had about 20 men and a few vehicles. If he went up against the SS alone, it would be a suicide mission. He needed firepower. He needed the Americans. 8 miles away, the reconnaissance unit of the U.S. 12th Armored Division had just arrived in Kufstein. Leading them was Captain John C. Jack Lee. Jack Lee was a character straight out of a Western. He was brash, loud, and brave. Imagine the scene when Major Gangl drove his Kugelwagen toward the American lines, waving a massive white flag. He didn't come to surrender. He came to recruit. Through a translator, Gangl explained, "The SS are going to massacre the prisoners at Itter. I need your help." Captain Lee looked at the German major. He saw sincerity. Lee radioed his HQ. "I've got a situation here. I'm going in." But the bridge to the castle was too weak for a full column of tanks. Lee had to leave his reinforcements behind. He took only his command tank, a 76mm Sherman named Besotten Jenny. He took 7 American infantrymen. And he took Major Gangl and his truckload of Wehrmacht soldiers. As the sun set on May 4th, the strangest convoy of the war rumbled up the mountain road. An American tank, a German truck, together, Along the way, they cleared SS roadblocks, firing in unison. When they reached the castle, the French prisoners were stunned. They expected a liberating army. Instead, they got a single tank and Germans? The tension inside the castle was palpable. The French hated the Germans. The Americans didn't trust them. But Captain Lee took charge. He was the cowboy, and this was his Alamo. He positioned Besotten Jenny at the main gate to block the entrance. He placed his G as on the south wall. He placed Gangl's men on the north wall. And then they waited. Inside the Great Hall, Americans and Germans sat together, cleaning their weapons, sharing cigarettes, and eating rations. For one night, the war paused. Dawn. May 5, 1945. The silence was broken by the roar of an Hyde 88mm anti-tank gun firing from the hills. Boom. The shell slammed into the castle masonry. The SS had arrived, and they had brought an army. Around 150 SS troops began to advance through the woods, firing machine guns and rockets. Inside the castle, it was chaos. Captain Lee ran to his tank, Besotten Jenny, but the SS gunners had it dialed in. Another shell struck the tank directly. The Sherman burst into flames. The crew bailed out just seconds before the ammunition cooked off. The defenders had lost their only heavy weapon. Now it was just rifles and submachine guns against a battalion. The battle that followed was desperate. The French VIP's men in their 70s refused to hide. Paul Reynaud grabbed a MP-40 submachine gun. General Gamelin took a rifle. They stood at the windows, firing alongside the young American and German soldiers. "Watch the left flank," an American would shout. "Jawohl." A German would reply, laying down suppressing fire. The SS were closing in. They were using the cover of the woods to get within grenade range. Ammunition was running critically low. The radio was dead. Captain Lee knew they couldn't hold out much longer. They needed a messenger to get through the lines. By early afternoon, the situation was dire. Former Prime Minister Reynaud was leaning out of a window, trying to spot an SS machine gun nest. Major Josef Gangl saw what Reynaud didn't. An SS sniper taking aim. In a split second, Gangl made his choice. He didn't dive for cover. He dove at Reynaud. He shoved the Frenchman out of the way just as the rifle cracked. The bullet meant for the politician struck Major Gangl in the chest. He fell instantly. The German officer, who had defied his own country to do what was right, died on the floor of the castle, surrounded by his former enemies. He was the only defender to lose his life that day. A martyr for a cause that transcended flags and borders. The SS were now at the gates. They were preparing to blow the entrance with explosives. Captain Lee ordered his men to fix bayonets. They were going to fight to the last man. But then, a rumble. From the valley road, the sound of heavy engines grew louder than the gunfire. The relief column. The American 142nd Infantry Regiment had arrived, led by the tennis star, Jean Garotra, who had escaped earlier to find them. Heavy machine gun fire tore through the SS positions. The fanatics, realizing they were outflanked, broke and ran into the forest. The siege was over. As the American reinforcements walked into the castle courtyard, they saw a sight they would never forget. Dead SS soldiers outside, and inside, Americans and Wehrmacht soldiers, tired, dirty, but alive, shaking hands. Captain Jack Lee, face covered in soot, walked up to the relief commander. "What kept you?" He quipped. The battle for Castle Itter was a small engagement in a massive war, but its legacy is enormous. It proved that even when the world is tearing itself apart, honor still exists. Major Josef Gangl is remembered today as a hero of the Austrian resistance. A street in WGRGO bears his name. Captain Jack Lee returned home with a story that no one believed. 2 days after the battle, on May 7th, Germany surrendered unconditionally. But on that one day, on a hill in Austria, enemies became allies. They fought not for a flag, but for each other. This was the strangest battle of World War II. Thank you for watching this deep dive on Echoes of War. If this story amazed you, hit that subscribe button. We are dedicated to bringing you the most untold, high-quality military history on YouTube. Comment below. Who was the bravest person in this story? Gangl, Lee, or the tennis player? See you in the next one.